who cares? Don't care about YouTube. It literally matters not. So
Hey, YouTube views matter, Lloyd.
they do matter, but they're more for live videos. You're supposed to like promote that stuff.
You need to
Oh,
go.
I messed it up on there. Oh, actually, it is live. Crazy. So, well, hello, guys. Today is Sunday service with the crew, the OGs, the originals. We are back with Desmond and Courtney. Hello, guys.
Hola.
Hey, how's it going?
Hola. Hola is the word. And how's it going? It's going good. You know why? Because we're here. We're doing it. We're podcasting. So hopefully people are watching. And if you are watching, I have the comment section in front of me pulled up. I will address you as we go. And hello. Wow, that was quick, Boots. His name is William, but his actual name is Boots. That's his legal name. So, okay, guys. Today's topic is something that I feel like a lot of people are not aware of. Not only that, but like it's one of the very, very few things that I like sort of agree on Trump with is like disdain for China. China has been like an egregious human rights violator. They have been intellectual property violators. They have been freedom violators. Like everything bad they have been doing for the last, I don't know, forever. I can't even tell you when. But so I want to kind of go over that. But before we do that, I feel like it's only appropriate to sort of finish off where we left off last week. We were talking about defunding the police. Would you guys be okay sort of getting that out of the way first?
Yeah. I am down to talk about whatever first.
Hello, Kaylee. I see you. I see you watching. Okay, so let's do defund the police first because that's sort of an easier topic. The China topic is so ambiguous and it can go anywhere. So let's kind of finish off where we left off last week with defund the police. Does anyone here have a definition of what that actually means?
Yes.
After you.
So that's why you always ask open-ended questions, not like yes or no questions.
Oh.
Because she was right. She answered the question properly, but like that was my fault. I'm a bad interviewer.
Oh, I didn't know you wanted an explanation. I'm sorry.
No. For the listeners who might not know or who are possibly conflicted on like defund versus what's the other word?
Getting rid of the police.
Yeah,
Abolish.
like
Abolish. Yeah, it's beautiful.
So what's the difference?
Well, from what I understand, I feel like
Shane.
most people weren't actually calling for the police to be abolished. They were just calling for the police to be defunded. And I guess the difference really being that right now a lot of people believe that the police departments around the country have an exorbitant amount of like resources that go to them, and there's a lot of people who believe that they don't really need as much money as they're getting, and that money could go to other services that could complement the police in dealing with issues in the community.
Yes, that's pretty much what it is. So we do put, when you look statistically, it's kind of like the military. We put a lot of funding towards police, and a lot of it is just not like appropriated in effective ways. That's why when people are like, well, we can't even afford vests, well, a lot of the money is going where it shouldn't in the first place. So the idea is to put money behind education, which has empirically through studies been shown to decrease crime, especially violent crime. And social services, like increased social workers, have more social workers.
Hello, Shannon. I see you.
And have like separate entities to actually take care of this, because if you have somebody naked running outside who's got mental illness, instead of, I don't know, shooting them or suffocating them by sitting on them, you could call the social workers to come talk them down. It's about doing stuff like that to lower crime and to get more money towards people who actually are prepared to work with people in these situations compared to police who are just not educated to do that kind of stuff.
All right.
And there's also the fair question of, are we asking the police to do too much? I mean, like they do have a very difficult job as it is. And I mean, people like look at this as like an attack on the police, but maybe the better way of looking at it would be like, maybe we're asking the police to wear too many hats, and maybe it'd be better if we just like took some of the load off them by having some other people step in to help with all the different issues that they have to address.
I completely agree, because they're not used to, they don't take those mental health courses, and they live in a world where they could die at any minute. So they come at from that aspect, where if you had people who are more trained in like the police department as social workers, they're used to it. They're more prepared. They know how to handle it and how to talk to people, and they know like the actual rates of violence among people who are mentally ill.
I have a question. Maybe the reason our police are so funded is because we as a country have more freedoms that lead to more violence, more shootings. We have more guns. We are just not equipped in the same way other countries are to have our police be successful, right? So in other countries, they don't have guns. Their police force, they obviously, a lot of them at least, don't have like racial tension. There's not ghettos. They don't have a history of racism. That doesn't lead to these ghettos. That doesn't lead to gang violence and poverty. And so, is that just part of the deal? Are we supposed to just accept this because like we have guns, we have these freedoms that lead to freedom of speech, freedom of religion, right? Or freedom of whatever that just leads to more interaction with police? Is that just part of the problem?
No, I think. Oh, you can go first.
I don't know that that's necessarily a great correlation to draw. I mean, if I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure Canada has similar, also has, like a strong, like, culture of, like, gun ownership up north, and they don't really have the militarized police that we do.
It will be good, Brian, I promise. Sorry. Talking to the audience.
Oh, okay.
Got two Brians just joined us. Appreciate it, guys. Anyway, continue. Sorry.
Yeah, so that's what I had to say about that.
I completely agree too, because Canada does have very similar freedoms that we have, and there are actually a lot of countries that have freedom of press, freedom of speech and stuff like that. But I don't think we should accept it because, like I said, a lot of it comes from education. Education, like they have in Sweden stuff, higher levels of education have been proven to lessen crime, but it's the same with poverty. If we can find ways to decrease the wealth gap and pull more people out of poverty, they're less likely to commit crimes, especially violent crimes. Of course, we're still going to have those individuals. Nobody particularly wants us to take our guns away because we don't trust the government. I mean, some people do, but it's just not realistic that that's going to happen. But when you actually look at crime, there's a lot of social factors that it's more closely tied to and been like evidentially tied to compared to having freedoms. So that's kind of my opinion on it.
Me, as a black man, I don't trust the government, right? They've been historically so egregious to people of color. And so I don't know why you would trust the government if you're a person of color, just because, like, or even a woman, like, they've just been so dirty and, like, they took away the right to vote. It's crazy to me. Like, and so I think part of the reason is just the guns. Like, we have so many freaking guns. In America, like, 40% of houses have a gun, and if you have a gun, you're statistically more likely to have a bunch of guns. So, like, as a police officer, when everyone has a gun or multiple guns, or some people have just a crazy amount of guns, how can you be safe, right? Is it fair to wear body armor? Is it fair? Like, other countries, Australia, Europe, they don't have guns, so that's not a problem they have. So what do we do about that aspect of it?
I think a lot of that we could, like, fix with laws. Like, so we have NRA. If you've been to any NRA convention, you actually see people in their cars selling guns out of the trunks of their cars.
So many guns.
You actually see. It's, like, appalling. So if we actually did waiting times and, like, enforce the registration and crack down on the NRA, because the NRA doesn't even, it's just basically embezzling money. It doesn't even help the freaking gun owners, so I don't know why we're so pro NRA, but don't get me started.
Are they getting sued?
Yeah, non-profits and, like, malappropriation of funds and embezzling, like, it's just ridiculous. Don't get me started on that. But if we started doing safer sales, or why do you need a bump stock? Like, there's things.
You can't get them anymore.
It'd be a lot easier for an armed citizen to stop somebody if they don't have an automatic weapon, like a bump stock that's firing quicker than you can pull your trigger. So I think that would be definitely helpful to us if we did stuff like that, because it would give the police more, I don't know, power.
Well,
they wouldn't have to be so scared.
President Trump just outlawed those bump stocks, didn't he?
He alleged it. Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Hello, Jessica. See you there. Yeah, it's in our Constitution. That's a big problem, and it's such an ambiguous clause, right? The right to bear arms shall not be infringed. Like that's it. That's basically the whole clause. And so with other amendments, it's like they're like huge paragraphs. Some of them are like multiple paragraphs. With the Second Amendment, it's like real short and sweet. And so my biggest thing is the Second Amendment is an amendment. Amendments are literally made to be changed. It's called an amendment, like it's been changed. And so this idea that it's sacrilegious, we can't change it. I don't know, man. Like I enjoy gun freedom. I think it's awesome. As a person of color, I think everyone should own a gun. Like the government's been very unfair to me and people like me, and so why not have a gun? But like the amendment can be changed, right? Like we can do that. Like that's what it's called, right? Am I wrong?
I don't think there's anything wrong with gun ownership personally. I think it just always just depends on how exactly you obtain a gun and kind of like the situations around it. I was listening to another podcast. I think it was actually Joe Rogan's podcast a couple of months back, and he was having a talk with, oh God, I forget the guy's name, but it's actually a famous guy from Great Falls. But anyway, that's besides the point. They were talking about the idea that, like, one of the things that would be nice for just like all gun ownership is that if you just like were required not only to have a background check but to just do like just general like gun safety classes.
Thank you.
Like just to do that the same way that you would do if you were getting your driver's license. You have to take a driving exam. You have to go get your license. Like I don't know why it should be any different for a gun. Like you just go take like just like a general safety exam just so that you know how to operate a gun. You get trained the right way. You get your gun license.
You know the difference, right? The difference is the difference? Guns are in the Constitution. It says shall not be infringed. So people get zealous about it. Cars are not in the Constitution.
Well, voting's in the Constitution, but you still have to register to vote. I mean, like I feel like you can make these arguments anyway.
Go through loopholes to vote in this day and age too.
Yeah.
It's pretty hard.
I totally
shout out
guys.
Everybody in the chat.
I'm on this. Yeah, I'm shouting at everybody. If you're watching me, I'm shouting out to you, 100%. That's how it works. But I'm on the same page there. Like I think we should have any gun legal. If you want to own a nuke, that's cool. Guess what? You have to take like a 2-year class on like the safety of nukes, and you have to have a $1 million retainer or $200 million retainer of insurance to like own a nuke. If you can do that,
bro.
You can own a nuke.
I don't think anyone should own a nuke.
Okay, let's walk it back. Helicopter.
Mass extinction isn't my thing.
Yeah.
But I do completely agree with the education. I hate to be that person because, it's me, Tiger King. So his first husband shot himself, and you want to know why? He removed the magazine from his gun and was like, you can't shoot a gun without a clip in it. One in the chamber shoots himself right in the head.
Yep.
Education. If you took a basic education class in guns, you would know that you always check to see if there's a bullet in the chamber.
Yeah, we do need that. It's crazy in a country with so many guns. We're so ignorant about it. And whenever I watch like Hollywood movies with people with guns, I always get like just completely triggered. People doing flagging each other and not gun safety. It's just ridiculous. Mm-hmm. But how does that tie into defund the police? Because like our Constitution allows Americans to have just a mass volume of guns. And that is clearly not a good recipe when your public defender, your public servants are in the eye of the public every day, stopping people in their cars, doing checkups on domestic violence, all these things that we actually want them to do. But there might be a gun, right? There might be a really powerful gun, not a normal gun, like a semi-automatic with a huge clip, or some kind of crazy weapon. So we just don't educate on that well. And honestly, I'm sort of hopeless on the whole thing because I don't know how we go forward when our Constitution says shall not be infringed. There's no way the politicians of our time are going to make changes on that. There's just no way, right?
I don't know if it's a real fair argument, to be 100% honest with you. And I think mostly why that is like I don't know that the populace of the country owning guns really equates to the need to have the police maintain their current levels of funding. I don't know that really like is like an equal statement there. I mean, because like for instance, there's certain like parts of the country where it's obvious to me that the police do need to be funded the way that they are. There's certain areas that are have really high crime rates, and the police probably do need to have what they have in those areas. However, like I was mentioning on our last episode, the city that I live in Missoula, Montana, where we have like 55% of our budget going to our police next year, that makes absolutely zero sense because there's next to no crime here. So why would half of our tax dollars be going to fighting an invisible enemy? There's no crime in Missoula, so why are they getting that much money? So I feel like it really kind of depends on the area. Like, I mean, like certain police departments, yeah, maybe they need that much money. Other police departments, not so much.
But I think we need to look long term. This is a tertiary cure by giving more people money even if they need it as the police. Because the thing is, when you look at things that decrease poverty, like statistically and research proven, like I said, it's increasing levels of education, increasing job opportunities, decreasing poverty, decreasing tensions. Those are things, and the reason we don't do them, we're an immediate satisfaction place. So we don't care. We don't want to put money forward. We don't want a plan that's going to take 30 years, a couple of generations to go into effect, but really you're just doing a band-aid at that point. If we defund the police, I don't really like that word because obviously you still have to have appropriate funding, but if we take that money that is just sitting there waiting to get misappropriated, we could spend it on those things to actually make a difference in the long term and actually decrease our levels of violent crime in the United States.
Well, Courtney, you're not being entirely fair here to the private prison industry. They really count on these people going to jail. You know,
We really do.
Those stocks, private prison stocks.
the private prison industry needs people to fill those beds. Okay, they need more people to go to jail for marijuana possession.
You know, we're the only people who have like private prisons because, you know, America.
Yeah.
So, one of the audience, Brian, one of our mutual friend, yeah, shall not infringe does not mean no restrictions. It means like, you know, you can't take it away at its base level, but it does not mean it's a well-regulated militia. That well-regulated part to me is important. We need to have that. So
Hands down agree with that statement.
Yeah, but like I said, the biggest problem is it's in the Constitution. That's a very hard thing to change. Politicians elect on that. You know, it's very difficult. So I think your point, Courtney, is like the best. Like that is the truth. Like that is the law. Like we need to appropriate that money somewhere else, you know, and reappropriate it and put it to education, put it to gun safety, put it to ways that keep people out of poverty, that have mental health in a more secure place, right? So we're not committing crimes, and I think you'll see the problem fix itself. But yeah, and like you said, Desmond, private prisons, I don't even know how we stop that when it's like, how is that even legal in the first place? It makes no sense to me. But
there is so many things in this country that blow my mind about how they're legal, like how exactly is that legal? And yeah, that's pretty high up on the list. You know, so, honestly, like
that and private hospitals, man, I will never understand, and private insurance.
Yeah, so, I mean, if we really wanted to like give a good like talking about this subject, I mean, one of the reasons why the police are so militarized in this country is probably because of the private prison lobby and because like how much money they throw at these departments, incentivizing them to lock more people up.
Oh, absolutely, and insurance. We don't have mental health stuff caused by insurance lobbyists, and mental health is one of the big reasons we have people on the streets. Like, it really is. It's appalling that we don't have funded mental health care or funded health care, period, because that's how you get people working and get people out of poverty. If you have a morbidity from a stroke because you didn't get primary care, you're not working, you're not making money. A lot of people turn to violence and crime to survive.
Let's diverge real quick on the point you made, private hospitals. That's something I really never thought about. Like, a private hospital, that's a bad thing?
In a way, yes, because they can turn a profit. So other countries who actually, when they made the switch to care, they had kind of a more tertiary system too. But the reason we do tertiary care, which is like hospital care, somebody has a heart attack, they get a coronary artery bypass. That's tertiary care as compared to putting somebody on a statin, which lowers your cholesterol for life to prevent it. So hospitals make more money, and insurance makes more money off of those things. So that's where our focus is shifted. If you put it public and you can't turn a profit, then it's more effective for that company to provide primary care. And that's what every other industrialized country does except for us.
Primary care is one of the words I always hear tossed around, right? Like primary care means you have one doctor, medicine. Right? Say it again.
Preventative medicine is what it is. Okay. So putting somebody on blood pressure pills so they don't have a stroke, putting somebody on a statin or a cholesterol med so they don't have a heart attack.
Yeah, okay. I'm not very well versed in the healthcare industry, by the way, just so you guys know. I am by no means an expert in healthcare.
But
I
Courtney
have some
is.
opinions, but to me, this is why like you have a cabinet. If I was president, my cabinet would handle this. Honestly, like I think it's so naive. To, like,
Yeah.
let's do this for healthcare. No, how about I have the doctor who has 25 years of experience tell me what
That's
to
what
do?
drives me crazy about Trump is Trump
Yeah.
doesn't listen to his cabinet and he just fires people until they basically just agree with whatever he says.
Yep. Until they kick the can the way he wants it to, right? That's a
Yep.
big issue. Yep. So I don't know, man. Like,
Yeah.
that's
Here's my
a
two
weird
cents
subject.
on the.
Go
Here's my
ahead,
two
Desmond.
cents on the hospital thing. I'll just put this out. This is something that I saw
What's up, Michael?
that I posted
Some prairie.
a couple months ago, where it was someone said like the irony of hospital CEOs complaining about 50-cent masks being sold for $7 after they built an entire career selling 50-cent bags of saline for $500.
Oh my God. So my friend was a pharmacy tech, right? And they'd receive meds and the markup from the pharmacies would be on there and it'd be a couple thousand. And then when she entered in the computer, it would be a couple hundred to 1,000% markup for the hospital on
Just
what the
makes no
drug.
sense.
So you end up paying like 5,000 more, the 5,000 times what it was worth.
It just
It's
makes
appalling.
literally no sense. It's
Yeah.
profit,
Right.
right? For profit. So if we were to go more of a government regulated market, that would fix itself, you think?
It has in other countries.
Okay.
It'll
What
have
would you
its
say
pros
to
and
the
its cons,
criticism
just
of
like
this?
anything else, honestly.
What?
Well, there's some legitimate criticism, right? There's an argument to be made that in America, since we have very little regulations, companies are allowed to be free and they're allowed to try a bunch of stuff. The government doesn't put prices on it, so drugs are available, and we sort of subsidize the rest of the world because in other places, drug companies don't make profit, right? Or they make very little profit, so they make up for that profit here, and by doing so, they're allowed to, or they're able to exist in other places where they would never exist because the profit wasn't there. Is
Well,
there
no.
sort of argument there?
I've got a point to that. So do they really need to mark it up 3,000%? If you can make a pill for $5, does somebody really need to be spending $100 on their albuterol or like there we go, albuterol inhaler?
Yeah.
So before it was a generic. Well, let's go with Brio Ellipta. That one's still not generic. Does somebody need to be spending $236 with a coupon to get that when you can make it for cheap? You can still turn a profit, and with how many people in our overweight America have asthma really, really bad and need the Brio or have COPD, like you can turn a pretty good profit by even just doubling what you're selling it for.
But it's 1,000 times, right? Like,
Yeah, like that's the problem. You could even if you don't want insure like that. See, I'm not for pharmaceuticals being government run, but if we had regulations, the government puts so many stupid regulations out there to help like the coal industry and the paper industry and the oil industry, but they could be helpful and put regulations on like, oh, like we did with health insurance. You can't exclude somebody for having pre-existing conditions. Let's just say, hey, you're only allowed to make this much of a profit on your medications. And if they're life-saving, this much percentage, that kind of stuff.
so I have a question on that. Go ahead, Desmond.
I just wanted to chime in a little bit and get a little bit more context to the situation here. I understand that like one of the reasons why America's like, place in the world is because, our economy is so vast. And one of the reasons our economy is so vast because we found a lot of different ways to scam a lot of different people.
Yeah.
So, I mean, with that being said, though, I feel like the pharmaceutical companies, I think you really need to be put into context how much money they actually make to understand how much of a racket this actually is.
But it's billions a year.
Right. So approximately, like, if you combine all of like what they make in a combined year, they make roughly like somewhere in the neighborhood of like $70 billion. Okay. Now, if you were to compare that to the gross national product of other nations, they would be beating 130 other nations by themselves just as a few different companies. Talking about Pfizer and the likes.
It's not billions, it's 8.6 trillion was the average gross profit from 2000 to 2018 and 11.5 trillion for cumulative revenue.
What?
I mean, I was going by year, Courtney. You got to show me up with this.
No, I meant that's the average per year between those years.
Right,
Wow.
right. So what I'm trying to say is like they would be like,
Yeah.
somewhere in like the top 60 if they were their own nations. So
Yeah.
like the idea that these people can't be checked slightly is absolutely ridiculous. I feel like the problem that I really see is that every time that like someone on the left tries to like argue for like corporations to be regulated, they just get everyone on the other side of the aisle to get so riled up at this whole idea of, government takeover, that they kind of allowed that hysteria to shut down this conversation, when it really isn't that unreasonable to say, like, hey, you shouldn't be able to make this much money on life-saving medications.
Exactly. I was just talking to somebody who's a Republican, and they were saying, like, there are some things that you just have to regulate. They're like, I'm not for big government. I want my states to make a lot of my laws, but when it comes to health insurance, the companies have shown they can't do it reasonably. Yeah. They need regulation. They need to be run by the government. That kind of stuff. She was like, no, hands down. She's like, it doesn't go against my party views. It would actually help our nation and bring more money back into it if we did this. So I think a lot of people get stuck on the earth, us versus them mentality of it all. Like, oh my God, this party had this idea. It's horrifying. I refuse to hear any evidence as to why it could be good. Because both parties do have good ideas.
I think it's always better to be fiscally conservative, but then to be socially liberal. I think it's like almost always better.
Yes.
But you know what? You know what state doesn't have these problems because they have one party and they don't have rights? China. let's kind of diverge there because
segue.
Yeah, they literally. So we're talking about there's so much to talk over. Like, they have the Uyghur Muslims in internment camps. They have the Hong Kong, the reaction to that, and how they're sort of suppressing free speech and liberties there. We have the human rights violations with organ harvesting of low-level criminals. We have how China took over Tibet. Essentially, they took the Dolly Parsin, I can't remember his name, and they put they kidnapped him, replaced him, and so now the next Dalai Lama will be chosen by China. Oh my word! There's so much to go over here. China is just such an egregious place.
Yeah, that was a pretty messed up thing. China made it illegal to die and come back and be reincarnated.
Literally, I don't know, man. So, I want to start with are you guys familiar with the Uyghur Muslim situation in the internment camps?
Briefly, not.
So for those who aren't aware, there's a minority group in China. They're the Uyghur Muslims, and there's a couple million of them. So China is rounding them up and putting them in what can only be really called a concentration camp, right? And they're re-educating them. The ones that are not re-educatable are slave labored, or they are killed, put to death, and their organs are harvested in cruel ways. I don't understand why this is not making headline news. This is crazy to me. This is literally Nazi level of human rights violation. What's going on with that?
Fear. It's 100% fear. America is afraid of China, not in a military sense, but in an economic sense.
Yeah, they own their debt.
They're afraid of the backlash. I mean, China has such an imprint on the world right now with how much power they have. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of I feel as though they are similar to how the Nazis were before World War II started, where it was everyone kind of knew what was happening in Germany, but no one wanted to say anything.
What's up, Cameron? Yeah, it's literally disgusting. So this is the one thing that Trump has been persistent on is China, right? Now he only really harps on the intellectual property violations. But is it really all about money to where that's something we can focus on, but we don't focus on them taking basically confiscating the Dalai Lama, and he's been in exile for some time now, and harvesting organs of low-level criminals. Is it money? Is that the reason?
I believe so.
Think about it. Who runs our news and kind of decides what goes out there? All of our media is pretty much owned by a couple rich dudes. And if you think where we send all of our work to, all of our where we make stuff, I can't even think of the word. We're
outsource all of our jobs.
Yeah, outsourcing, yeah.
But I'm not looking for outsource. But yeah, all of our production is outsourced, and it's these people make money off of it. Are we really we're gonna attack them in a way that makes us look good, but we're not gonna attack them in a way that makes the world so mad that we go against them because they own most of our debt, and they own most of our production, basically, since they're the one who does it for cheap. So that's my opinion on it.
Yeah, you have too many corporations right now that are just... I feel like corporations have more power in our government than the actual government does.
Yeah.
And they are definitely scared of losing their money. I mean, you see the NBA backing down to China. You've
Yeah, that was
seen
wild.
like Apple backing out of China. You see Disney backing down to China. These are like some of the biggest like names in our country. Like Disney is basically like, you know, the biggest thing in our country right now. They were like, oh well, like please like help us make Mulan better so that you'll like it better, so it will get through your what do they call that?
Great Firewall of China.
Well, they have like their propaganda filters, because like every movie that goes over to China has to go through a Chinese propaganda filter before
So
they'll
even
allow it to be
Facebook-
shown in their country.
Even Facebook, I have a friend from China who was originally in medical school there, and she actually moved here for nursing, and it's just, that's how it is. So if you go to the doctor, to even get in line to be seen, you got to bribe the receptionist, you got to bribe the doctor, like, and Facebook, she was like, I like Facebook here because you can see everything. Facebook there is so ridiculously censored, they will ban you from Facebook, and you can get, like, I think she said arrested if you, like, post pictures and stuff that you're not supposed to be wearing. It is out of control.
I know at one point it was illegal to post like pictures of their prime minister, or like there was a comparison of him to Pooh, Winnie the Pooh, the bear,
Yeah.
like because he looks sort of like Winnie the Pooh, I guess, like, and so people were making memes were like comparing him to Winnie the Pooh, and like that became illegal. You just couldn't do that, right? And so, like, I want to complain because I'm in America and I have like freedoms like more than most countries, but then I look at China and it's like they don't even get to like say words, and they can't even post things, like, so China has just been so crazy. Let's transition that to the Hong Kong thing. Are you guys familiar with the whole Hong Kong riots over the last year or so?
Yeah, I think I can start this one off.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
So the Hong Kong protests are basically, the reason why they're happening and why they have been happening is because when in 1997, I believe, the UK actually like sold Hong Kong back to China as part of their like
That's
official like them leaving China, but they did so with the kind of like with the promise that Hong Kong would be able to maintain their like democratic like sense or stance rather for 50 years. And ever since 1997, China's been slowly infringing on that, even though they promised they wouldn't. So basically what's been happening recently with these protests is that China passed a law that said that, you know, if you break a law in Hong Kong, that you could be transferred over to mainland China. And everyone's kind of freaking out about that because when people get transferred over to mainland China, they sometimes like disappear and they're never seen again. And so it rightfully had like the millions of people in Hong Kong really freaked out. And so they've been kind of just protesting this because they believe that they had another like 30 years, I believe, or 25 years before they were ever supposed to be kind of like ingratiated back into mainland China.
Yeah, definitely. The crazy thing about it too is like Hong Kong was was England for a long time, right? I think it was Theresa May that signed that agreement. I think when she was prime minister or whatever. But crazy that like they didn't wait at all. They hardly waited. Like they didn't even like wait. The 50 years, not even close, right? Like, and so obviously when you're China, when you have these extreme rules and these extreme limitations, and like Hong Kong is sort of like, it's like the middle finger of the West, right? Sort of what it was. Like it was like, this is the West's, you know, how do I explain? Like this is a stain on our reputation because the West has maintained this land and all this, and we don't want that. We want to be as all part of the quote unquote communist China, right? And so obviously the government of China is not going to be down for that. But it's crazy that like you said, there was an agreement of like 50 or something years, and they didn't even wait half of it to start infringing. Like I don't know, man. Like
it's crazy. There's been reports that like there's like certain people who were selling books in Hong Kong who were like books about basically telling the truth about what's happening over in mainland China, and several like BBC like documentaries like would go over and talk about how these people who were selling these books in Hong Kong would just like disappear. Like their shops would just be deserted and the people who ran them were just gone. And then some of them never appeared again. Some of them did, but they didn't come back for months, and they never would speak about what happened to them. And I mean, you know, people in America always like to talk about like how America's turning into a police state and how 1984 is right around the corner. But that is like already happening in China. Like, I feel for the people in China.
Straight 1984 in China, mainland China right now. So the thing is, yeah, people are freaking out about here, but you shouldn't do a comparison. That's like saying, oh, my fruit's just starting to spoil, but their fruit's really spoiled. So whatever, I'm not going to do anything about it. I don't think that's a fair comparison. I think you should still take action. Sorry, that's just like a little side rant.
I don't know. I wasn't saying don't take action. I was just saying that, I feel for the people who are going through that. We like to think that like these things don't happen anywhere in the world, but they're happening like today, like currently.
They do. Like, look at the LRA is slaughtering Muslims in freaking Africa. Like, it's happening all over.
Well, what's crazy is
show it on our TVs so people don't know.
China is currently the second strongest GDP in the world. It's not like this is like some African country. We're not talking about like, Somalia or the Ivory Coast. We're talking about the second most, technically, I don't know, whatever metric you want to use, civilized country, the most profitable country is doing this. Like, this isn't like backyard. This is like right in your face.
It's shocking because China's always been this way.
Yeah, but they weren't always this strong, though. They weren't always this powerful.
No, they aren't. That's absolutely terrifying, and that's why I think we need to take action. But the thing is, no matter what Trump says against them, Trump has actually not gone out of his way to actually try to take action, and neither have the Republicans. I mean, freaking Gianforte's whole job originally was to find ways to outsource to China for jobs. That was his job.
That was literally his career.
A true stand, because we have a plutocracy. Like, I think it was... Desmond said, like, our corporations run America. That's what we have. We have a plutocracy run by the rich.
Isn't it? Weren't we called a what's the word? Not plutocracy. What's the other word?
Oligarchy.
Well, the word? An oligarchy in theory.
Oligarchy. That's
plutocracy actually came out as kind of like a threat of what could happen. Kind of like in the Marxist area, they said, like, oh, the U.S. is turning into a plutocracy where corporations are in charge, but the correct term is an oligarchy, where multiple powers are in charge. We just have a theoretical oligarchy.
And like Brian in chat says, like, they have nukes. That's probably a reason we don't do much either. Maybe that's why, nukes are bad. I'm all for getting rid of nukes. Everyone should not have nukes. It's kind of silly that we have nukes, but
I don't know that nukes really matter the way they used to. I don't think anyone would actually use them in this day and age. I mean, France has nukes. I mean, I don't think we would ever be scared to attack them if we felt the need.
It depends how irrational somebody is. Because if we undergo nuclear winter, only a 6%-ish of our population will live. So I think you'd have to be pretty crazy to set one off.
That's pretty wild. 6%, that's not good.
That's bad. That is the expected survival rate of a nuclear winter.
Well, what about this? Like North Korea, they have nukes, or they don't know, they're making nukes. They're trying to. And that's why we are fighting so hard against them. Is that such a big deal? Like, nukes are really that big of a deal that it really helps? Because apparently, once they get nukes, they're like a sovereign nation, apparently. Like, we can't do anything to them. That's what it seems like, right? Like, that's their goal. So, and I know China also violates all embargoes and treaties with North Korea, and they allow them to build these nukes. But are nukes
can I speak on this really quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just on the North Korea part. I feel like North Korea, it doesn't get brought up that often in the media, like recently, thankfully. But I feel like that's just like an unnecessary like fear mongering on the government's part. Like, and that's not just the Republicans. I feel like that's like the Democrats too when Obama was in power. But like, North Korea has never really been a threat. I mean, at the end of the day, like, we've had the ability to shoot like missiles out of the sky since like the 1980s. Like, the Reagan administration was heading up that technology.
What's up, Leo?
So it's nothing new for us to be able to defend against a nuclear missile. And we have a bunch of like military bases in Japan. So even if they ever did fire a missile at the U.S., the bases in Japan would blow it out of the sky. And by any chance, if it made it past them, it would take them hours to go across the Pacific Ocean. And we would definitely see it by then. So like, there's no way a missile shot from North Korea would ever
went off, it wouldn't be bad. Like, one nuke, you're just going to have nuclear winter in one area. But what I was going to get at was I think North Korea, we use them as a fear thing because they're not a big threat. That's why I think we as the media use them is to distract, because we're not scared of actual repercussions from something. They don't owe anything. We don't own they don't own us, basically. So we use them as a threat to keep people scared and keep people confused and keep people arguing, but we can actually use them because we have no fear in using them as an example. whereas we're kind of in Russia and China's pocket.
Yeah, they can't even make a nuke that hits like targets near them, so there's no way they're a threat to us. And let's go worst case scenario. They nuke LA, right? That's probably the best case for them.
I don't even think it's possible, honestly. I mean, they
city.
wouldn't get past Hawaii.
Well, let's just pretend they hit, Hawaii or LA or some U.S. city, right? Like that'd be game over, right? We would just obliterate them. We would literally come in and just take over. We would just like militarily like take the country over, right? It would be bad for them.
I don't know that would even happen. Let me give you my theory on the case. I feel like China would do it for us because I feel like at the end of the day, one of the reasons why China's been such a good ally to North Korea for over these years is because the last thing that they want is they don't actually want the U.S. actually like to invade North Korea because then they would have a presence on their border, which they just don't want us that close to them.
That's probably a good point. That's probably what would happen. China would probably just like literally like you'd be talking about genocide levels of violence here. Like they would just come in, kill all like adults that were sort of because they're propaganda. They're brainwashed, right? Like they don't. I don't know if they know as a people that like it's not okay to like worship a dude who is like not a good person.
And it's weird though because speaking of mass genocide, when you actually look at the number of Chinese killed compared to the number of Jewish people killed in World War II, the Chinese were obliterated through genocide. So as people who are not as a culture new to genocide and being slaughtered literally because they're Chinese by the Japanese, you think like even with these internment camps, people would actually like look at history and be more tentative of this kind of stuff because they've been through it.
Well, according to the reason why they can't think about their history is because they don't have statues.
Of course.
They don't have statues.
History was erased.
They don't know their history. But I'm looking in the chat right now, and I think Brian makes a good point here. I think it is kind of crazy that we always are worried that another country will use a nuclear weapon when in all of history we're the only nation who ever has used a nuclear weapon against a actual like civilian population. Just us, the U.S. The end. That's the only name on the list.
We were making a point.
Was that appropriate, you guys think? Was it appropriate to the Enola Gay to bomb Nagasaki and Hiroshima?
No, I think it was illegal, honestly, because I feel like, maybe Hiroshima, but like after Hiroshima, the Japanese military surrendered. They surrendered. We
arms to make us look like the big strong guy. That's all it was. It was completely pointless.
No, they absolutely surrendered after Hiroshima, and we bombed Nagasaki anyway.
Yeah, that's because we were making a point. Like, don't do this again. Like, I'm not saying it's right, but I'm saying that's what the U.S. did. They were just like, look at what we have. Don't do it again. We will kill you.
Well, I want to say good thing. I really don't want to like make this a good thing, but one thing that happened from that was we now understand the power of nuclear weapons, right? And the nuclear weapons nowadays are far superior to what we used.
And nuclear anything too, frankly, because if we actually could go to like nuclear energy and that kind of stuff, we've made improvements. That's just kind of like a side fact of positives.
Well, we actually have, like the research and development, like we have the ability now to use like nuclear energy that's not weaponable. That's not weaponized.
Working on fission too. Working on nuclear fission. Like if we could get that to work, we'd like move mountains.
Like Layla in the chat, they did attack us first. They bombed Pearl Harbor, right? But like, is nuking two major cities like? Is that the response that we needed? Like maybe
the first one. The first one, sure, but like they surrendered after the first one.
That's how I feel too. Because the thing is, like, you have to think of the freaking millions of Jews and Chinese people that were killed because of this, and then them invading other countries and slaughtering people with handfuls, and before we were even involved bombing us. Like, yeah, sure, the first one because it was actually the strike of power that we needed to end the war, but again, like I said, we're just being macho America with the second one.
Yeah, Nagasaki didn't need to be hit. That was overkill. I think honestly, Hiroshima, it makes sense.
What's up, Jamie and Sean? Oh, look at that! Holy cow, two people. I think in the grand scheme of things, like you said, there was World War II, right? Like there were like gross, egregious human rights violations happening. Mm-hmm. The world was like not in a good place. I particularly, maybe it sounds my dirty American heritage, but I don't have a huge problem with the bombing of Nagasaki and Hiroshima, right? Like I think like in a wartime situation like that, when they're willing to kamikaze planes into buildings to kill Americans, and like Germany is like taking over the world, like you think things got to happen, man. Violent things got to happen, and that was one of them. And I think we learned from it. I think that was the first time we did that, and I think now we know the consequences of it. So I'm not totally against it, and we haven't used it since. So that's props to us, I guess. But I don't know, like war is so. Maybe my military friends can kind of parlay off this, but like war is not like a good thing. Like there's nothing good about war. It's the worst thing to ever exist. Like it's the worst thing ever. And so bombing a whole city that's war, man. Like I don't know, man. Like, so anyway, we're sort of diverged here.
That's what we
China.
do.
Yeah, China. Let's go back to China. I have
Sunday
so much
service.
to talk about
We
China.
preach.
Do you guys know about like the Olympics? Do you guys watch the Olympics?
Yes, sometimes.
I'm sort of parlaying into the Olympics because they do pretty well in the Olympics. And you know why?
Drugs.
Well, that's probably part of it. But they like kidnap children at the age of like 4 when they show any sort of talent in any sport or any trade, and they like make them do that stuff until they're gold medalists. And
Wow,
they forget about them.
I was gonna say authoritarian type practice, teaching, coaching, where you don't stop. Your feet can bleed, but you're gonna stick that landing.
Oh, hold on. I might have lost sound in my ear. Can you plug it in? Unplug it, plug it back in.
It's always the answer.
Also, my daughter, she is like over there playing Moana. Apparently, not sponsored Disney, so no shout out to you. Good movie though. But anyway,
Excellent movie. Carry on.
You're welcome.
yeah, you're welcome, Disney. They need the sponsorship anyway, right? They'll probably censor my video, strike me down now. Like we heard the word Moana, but yeah, like they literally kidnap like 4-year-olds and like make them into basketball stars. And then once they're 25, 26 and they're done doing their sport, they're abandoned.
I feel bad for those kids.
It's so crazy. Like, and we're the most Olympic country there is. Like we win a lot of Olympics.
I have a weird side question because I'm not really familiar about this. I know a lot of people disappear who go against, but the same thing happens in Brazil. The police kidnap people, but what they do is they have drug dealers that they actually trust more because the drug dealers basically will like kill off the police and they will help the people and the locals not get kidnapped. Is there anything going on like that in China?
I honestly don't know.
Probably not.
I know they kidnap people for sure. I think the government in China is far more enforced. Yeah, far more powerful than the Brazilian government, and you don't see these militias rise up against them because like they'll just come to your house and kill you.
Like, yeah, the police just do the dirty work in Brazil. Basically, it's like one government, corporations, super rich, everybody else extremely impoverished, and if your area of town starts acting up, they just kidnap your kids and kill them.
That's literally it, right? Like. The moral story is here, like, I wanted to kind of go over China because I wanted to make people aware, like, I know it's an election year and, like, nothing matters in an election year besides, like, Joe Biden sniffing people, apparently. I don't know. Like, he's the most he's the most liberal president ever. Shut up. Anyway, but, like.
FDR?
Please. Yeah, I know, right? Like, he served, like, 3 terms, whatever. But if you get a chance, people, go online, look up, some of these human rights violations of China, and by the way, hello, Kathy, because I really want this brought to light because they're catching up in GDP. And like me as a libertarian, what that means is once they equal us or pass us in GDP, they are now the most prevalent nation in the world. And if the mantra of kidnapping people and that sort of ideology continues to grow and foster, like that becomes the way of the world, right? Like just like how everyone speaks English, because we make them speak English, that can happen with China. They can have that sort of influence, right? And I'm scared about it. I don't mind them having influence. I just need people to know that they're literally
the country who should not be a communist or fascist country. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
A country that actually promotes freedom and is willing to fight for it, because if a power like that comes in charge, they're going to support other countries doing the same thing.
And then when you see the United States, people say, oh, we're so socialist, we're so communist. No, we're not. People are not being rounded up. Well, actually, that's not true. People are in camps, right? We sort of have that kind of too. But they're not being, like, based on your religion, like Christians and Muslims getting put into camps. And then if they are not able to be taught the Communist Manifesto.
Have we not done that? Remember, we had Asian internment camps just in case that, Like, not even just everybody Asian, just in case you were one from like one of the countries that was attacking us. We've done that in the U.S. already.
And then
Like,
they literally let them serve in the military. Hey, you can come out of the camp to come shoot people, but like once you're back home, get back in the camp.
like it's
What?
an easy step that we can make. We're like the kings of like Marxism, targeting people, the Red Scare. Like, I just think we're skirting a dangerous line right now that we really need to pay attention to and not be blinded by politics. And I think a good way of that is to actually learn about places like China and what they're doing, and to even look back and see how things have gone, or even like Iraq in the 80s before like women had to wear burqas and stuff, and look at the small things that happened to lead to this. I think is ever relevant today in America.
See, this is why we have her on. That's just a golden take right there. That is, I could not have said it better myself. Do you have any thoughts on this, Desmond?
A lot. I mean, I think my overall like takeaway from China is that like I think the thing that scares me about China the most is the fact that they are basically so overt about what they're doing, and that so many nations really do know what's going on, and not only are they silent about it, they just actually like somewhat defend it. I remember hearing a senator from California, I think her name was Dianne Feinstein. She just was like testifying before the Senate like just earlier this year, saying that China was a really respectable nation that really was getting its act
Wrong.
together.
Fake news.
Right, but that's not the point. The point is that like she is someone who probably gets briefed with with what's actually going on over there. Yet she still went out and said that publicly in a Senate meeting, which just means that China's influence is actually spreading into our government. So that really bothers me.
Yeah, that bothers me too, but I think it's other governments as well, because you don't hear like, so I like to watch news from other countries and, read news from other countries. Like, no countries are saying anything against it, really.
Yeah. Yes.
Well,
so
that's kind of our responsibility, right? Like, we're the highest GDP. We're the nation that runs the ship.
Yeah, we're what everybody looks to.
And so if we're not doing it, of course they're not going to do it, right? Like, same with like nuclear power. If we're over here burning coal,
yeah,
everyone's going to burn coal. If we're doing natural gas, they're going to burn natural gas. If we don't promote, solar and wind, they're not going to use that stuff. So to me, that's one of Trump's biggest flaws. Is that.
True. Costa Rica right now is 98% reliant on renewable resources. 98 in Costa Rica.
Oh no, I'm not saying that we can't do it. And there are definitely outliers. I'm saying like you look at like India, right? India takes
countries, yeah.
Yeah, India looks at China and they look at us and they're like, what are the countries doing well? Let's do that, right? Because they have 1 billion people too, and we have the economy, and they're like, let's do that.
More of that. That's one of the annoying things about that is everybody does expect us to be doing well and looks to us. So then we almost automatically assume that we're doing the best instead of looking at it and being like, oh, Portugal and the Netherlands, they made all drugs legal. And with the tax money on drugs, they've actually seen a decrease in people dying and a decrease in people doing drugs, and they've increased their footprint for like mental health use and drug addiction counseling. So it's like, instead of looking at that, we're like, no, drugs are bad, like that is our like thing. Drugs are bad. Everybody should think drugs are bad. I think we should look at what other countries are actually doing. And sure, it may not pan out. We may not think it's a good idea eventually, but we should still like look at what other countries are doing and being like, hey, is that working or is that not working? I think we get too involved in our ultimate power that we don't pay attention to like what we can also learn from other countries and what they're doing well.
I think that's spot on. I think people see the GDP, they see that money, they see our economy, and they're like, oh man, they're a great country. And then they totally forget that the police kill people crazy, like so many people, and they put so many people in jail, and our healthcare is so bad, and we have no mental health care in the United States, and there's childbirth, teen pregnancy, there's so many things we just do so bad. But on paper, that money though, you know what I mean? That GDP, what about the paper?
Good. That and COVID are all we're number one in. So
yeah, COVID, there we go. Yeah, it's crazy. Like we're more. Hello again, Natalie. I thought you were here earlier. But we are beating places like India, where people live like, 4,000 people on a block. We're beating them in COVID. That's crazy.
God, we beat them in communicable disease. We beat them in infant mortality. We beat them in mother mortality. We're just like owning it in the U.S.
Well, Can I play devil's advocate here a little bit?
Yes.
In a country that large and in a government that's not really that well organized, is it really fair to say that they've been tracking their information as well as we have?
No.
That's totally fair. Yeah,
Because
like,
I don't know if people understand how big India actually is. Do people understand that it's like the
It's
second biggest
massive.
country in the world? Like there's over 1 billion people in India, like 1 billion.
there's like almost 2 billion, right?
Well,
It's 1.1
China,
billion.
there's
But
no way they're looking at their rates, because remember when they had closed down Hong Kong and they eventually opened the borders and they were wheeling out tens of people? We never got those numbers. China probably had way more cases than we were originally led to believe, just because it was never publicized. Because so many people were dying, it was hard to keep count, especially with limited resources. That could easily be going on in India.
I saw a conspiracy where they were saying China killed people with COVID to reduce the numbers, right? They would internment camp them or they would disappear forever. Just be gone. Your dad has COVID, he's
They
gone.
control their media a lot and their public perception because they want to beat us. And if they're not handling COVID well, they're not going to beat us. So I actually wouldn't be surprised.
Which is crazy to me because, like, you don't have to really look hard to beat us. It's not like you have to try very hard. Like, I don't know what, like, just own the numbers for a little short bit. Your GDP is rising. China's doing things that are, that are getting them in the national spotlight. Keep doing that. Don't worry about the COVID stuff. We're mishandling it terribly. So you don't have to try to beat us there.
US, though, like, perception is everything. Trump started getting all of our results not sent to the CDC just so that we could control the release of that information and how we're perceived as doing with COVID.
yeah, I just wanted to throw one more little stat out about India really quick before we switch gears completely. I heard a really messed up thing about what's happening over in India recently. They're I don't know if they have like if it's a president or a prime minister, but I believe the guy's name is Modi or something like that. Anyway, recently he took away the citizenship of every single member of every single person who lives in the country of India, and then overnight gave it back to everybody in the country except people who were Muslims.
What?
Yes.
Yeah, I know. You're like, what?
My favorite thing to hear about, like, the attacks on Christians, like, frickin' the attacks on Muslims around the world are insane. I had somebody trying to tell me, well, the Christians haven't done anything since another religion since the Crusades, and I'm like, well, now we have India, we have the internment camps in China, we have the LRA in Africa.
You know what? You know why they don't know their history? They don't have statues.
Again, true. But like,
Back to the statues.
Obama for being Muslim. And I'm sitting here thinking, as people are denying like crazy that he's Muslim, I'm like, who cares if he's Muslim?
Well, he's not. I don't even want to hear that argument because he's not. He wasn't a Muslim. He literally wasn't a Muslim.
But it drives me insane that people are acting like that's a bad thing, because America is becoming very secular in that way. And it's like that, like, in Africa.
What's up, Jackie?
Gosh, where is my friend from? He's from, I can't remember.
I had a buddy in Ghana, and yeah, he told me some stories, but let's play sort of devil's advocate.
Can I make one point really quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Their political parties in a couple, like, he's from Nigeria, and around him, their political parties is, are you going to vote for the Christian or are you going to vote for the Muslim?
Well,
it's weird. I loved talking to him about politics in his country. He was one of the most fascinating people to talk to, because I'm not super familiar with, like, politics in that region, and I was like, oh my gosh, because it's just crazy to listen to. But carry on. What were you saying, Lloyd?
First of all, Nigeria has some huge cities, by the way. They're actually one of the prominent African nations. But anyway,
they are the most prominent African nation. In fact, they have the highest population of any country in the continent.
We have to address sort of the elephant in the room when talking about Muslims, right? Like, because people will always bring back to this, right? Like ISIS, Boko Haram, terrorist organizations, Sharia law, these Middle Eastern countries.
Terrorist organization of Christians.
Say again?
The LRA, Lord's Rebellion Army, that Coney runs. They're a terrorist group.
And they're Christian?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But, I mean, we can focus on that too, but we have to, like, address the fact that for some reason, I don't know, large groups of Muslims, I don't want to, like, generalize, but, like, we see these extremist organizations, they often are Muslim, right? And you see like Muslim countries have these,
But if you actually look into it,
Muslim.
there are a lot of actual terrorist groups that are Christian based. It's just the media doesn't put it out there. We're a Christian nation. Are we going
That's probably what it is.
demonize other Christians? It's actually really fascinating if you look into it. But carry on.
The parallel here is like you look at I don't want to get into this. This is actually another can of worms, but the Palestine and Israel conflict, right? Like the vast majority of people in Palestine are like law-abiding people, like completely. They're not like they're just trying to get by day to day. And there are small sects of terrorism there, and they use that to justify the whatever happens there. But I don't want to get into Palestine and Israel because that's a whole other topic. But
yeah, it is.
I want to address what you just said about Muslims, though.
Go ahead. Yep.
Because I'm going to actually touch on this exact same premise when I do my my next episode of my podcast. By the way, my podcast is called Independent Thought, for those who are wondering.
Shout out.
The thing that drives me crazy about this topic is that when people think about Muslims, they automatically think about terrorists, is that it is the exact opposite thing that I hear a lot of other people saying about like the police. So like right now, like in America, we're having these conversations where it's like we're trying to demonize giant groups of people by looking at their worst examples, and there are always these really like minute like sections of these groups. So like for instance, with like Black Lives Matter right now, like they just came out with the stats saying that like 93% of all protests were peaceful, but yet all the coverage is focused on the 7% of people who were using the protests as an excuse to riot and loot, right? And so like now the same exact idea where you have people who are like defending the police saying that like, well, like 99% of police officers don't actually commit these atrocities that you're seeing. You're just focusing on the 1 or 2%, right? And so that's kind of the same exact argument. Why are you judging a large group of people based on these small people who are kind of like giving a bad name to everyone else? There are over 1 billion Muslims in the world, and we're focusing on maybe like 10,000, maybe like 25,000 people out of 1 billion who are radicalized. Like, I don't understand like why we would take this small group of radicalized people and trying to say that all Muslims are bad because those people are bad and they happen to be Muslim.
Well, it's
crazy to me.
The media, that's why.
Right, but like we should all be smart enough by now. I understand like maybe like like a young impressionable kid who's 18 doesn't really know that much better, but we're all like like adults now. Like, we should be able to see past like the bullshit and the nonsense.
It's us versus them. So, like, we are one of the most nationalist countries, like, unlike, China, Russia, and North Korea. Most of the world thinks our nationalism's a joke, but it's, like, kind of who we are. We are independent. We have fought to be independent. We are not a we country. We are an I country. And, like, I am a Democrat. Screw whatever any Republican says. It can't be valid. I go for the LA, or they're not the LA Raiders anymore. They're not even. Let's not even go like 30, 40, 50 years back when they were. They've hopped a few places. The Las Vegas Raiders, I'm a fan. Screw anybody who likes the Bears, blah, blah, blah. That is how our country is. So people like aren't even almost willing to critically think about it. And like, it doesn't help that our critical thinking has gone down greatly when it comes to our standardized tests. Like, our education is not putting us in a point where we can actually critically think about stuff. So that doesn't help either. But I think people are almost even unwilling to try because of this whole team pride thing that we have in America going on right now.
Is that part of the reason? Like, it's okay to pick your team and then just stay in that team. It doesn't matter what any of the opinions are. It doesn't matter what the other party says. It's just like you pick your camp and then you're good to go, right? That's kind of like you're born into it, right?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Like, I think there's something to say. Like, I don't know what America did right. Like, what did America do right that led us to such prosperity? Obviously, there's a dark side to it, but like we have obvious prosperity. And what you look at, like I said, Iraq in the 80s, their people were pretty free and liberal, and all of a sudden, I don't know what changed, but now they're not. And you look at some of these African countries, same thing. There are large points in history where they were like on the road to democracy and doing really good things. And then some power structure came in, whether Muslim, Christian, I don't know, whatever religion or whatever authoritarian view took over. They're just not in that direction anymore. So how did we avoid that? We seem pretty authoritarian to me, pretty nationalist.
Well, I feel like Machiavelli said it best: love is stronger than fear. and Americans love their country, and so they're willing to, work their ass off for it. And I feel like that's because like we do have more freedoms here than other countries do. And so I feel like people just kind of like appreciate this place more than other places do.
Other countries is kind of vague. Like Canada basically has the same freedoms as us. A lot of European countries have very similar freedoms to us.
Canada has a great economy. They just don't have like a similar like population to us.
Devil's advocate for Canada and European Union to some slight extent. Without us, would they be Canada we know?
Who's to say? Can't rewrite history.
What do you mean without us?
Like without the U.S., without the United States of America being the strongest nation in the world, right next door to them, they don't have to spend military. They don't have to put any money in military.
Even if we are the driving force between those countries being like it, they've run with it. They've become better. We haven't. We've almost shifted back to British rule, what we fought against with our like French Revolution era wealth maldistribution and our government trying to basically censor what we say, or they keep bringing it up at least. They haven't done it yet, but like...
They're trying. Yeah, they're trying.
Yeah. So it's like they've kept going. They have diverged, and they're going, and they're getting more freedoms, and they're trying harder, and they're actually decreasing their crime, increasing their education, increasing their portions of the population that actually work to the point that they work less hours than us and get more vacation because more of their people are working and they've found ways to do it. While we are kind of like, we're just going backwards a little bit.
Well, another devil's advocate argument here is that because we are British, when we were a nation in 1776 or whatever, like we were Sweden? Like we were tiny. We were nobody. And Britain was the United States.
I'm not sure that we are British. I haven't seen any statues of them recently.
This is going to be a reoccurring theme. I love it. But
sorry.
In 1776, the British were the biggest nation in the world. In 2020, we're the biggest nation in the world. So the same, the biggest nation has responsibilities other countries don't. And maybe there's an argument to say that, like Rome, the reason they failed was because just being the big brother, has just tolls on you. Is that something that can be argued?
I don't think so, because I think you can be a good example without going this out of control capitalist corporate way we're going. Because capitalism is based on never-ending growth. And our country can't sustain it. We don't have enough resources. Nonetheless, we don't have enough money. Sure, money is imaginary, but we can't just keep making money for never-ending growth. You can't have a fully capitalistic society without never-ending growth, and you can't fully support your citizens to the point of being able to do stuff without socialism. And we have these monopoly laws, but really what we have going on is basically a monopoly, but with 4 businesses when it comes down to it. So it's just we are broken. That's kind of the point here. We can maintain our power and maintain our outsourcing and our production and our influence, and I think we can do it in a way that where we actually support our citizens. And right now we're becoming a pretty big joke nationally. I know a lot of people who I still talk to from different countries overseas who think we're a joke. We're a laughingstock. We're losing our power right now, and a lot of it has to do with us not being strong as other countries with the amount of wealth we have. We pay 16% of our GDP towards health insurance, but our health insurance is subpar, and we have the largest GDP. The next country is France with 11%. It's we are becoming a joke because we're not handling our stuff and getting it together, so I think we're almost going to lose our power this way.
Do you think the end of the United States dynasty is coming soon, or do you think that's going to happen in our lifetime? You know what I mean?
Sometimes I do.
No.
I feel like it.
Right?
No. I feel like it'll inevitably end. It always does. Every empire falls.
Yeah, exactly.
That's just history. We've all seen that. I mean, I guess I'll stop with the statues joke, but we've all read enough to know that empires don't last forever.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I feel like we have enough sustain at the moment to where it would take something incredible for it to collapse in our lifetime.
Look why empires have collapsed. Rome, part of it was we took over too much area and our military and stuff was far spread, but part of it was the wealth inequity. We don't talk about that much.
Wealth inequality. Big point.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest parts is their police, they were thin, we caved into other places, but a lot of it was civil uprising. they lost so many people in their military, and pretty much people were slaughtered in the wealthy spots because it was a French Revolution type situation. Everything was crumbling. People were living off nothing, and it was so dispersed in so many few populations over such like areas of land. It wasn't hard for the Roman citizens to just demolish those in power.
Well, I think you just solved solved the Rubik's Cube.
I am Roman. I embody their struggle. Okay.
That's how privileged we are in America.
Yeah.
I think you just solved the Rubik's Cube about why exactly the police budgets are so high.
Yeah, exactly.
Going right back, full circle.
I would love to do a whole podcast on wealth inequality, because this is a really big deal. Wealth inequality is like, it's not only the death nail, the final nail in the coffin for most prosperous nations. It's also like a huge problem. It's even without doing some sort of Nostradamus prediction of the end of the country, like wealth inequality has like obvious problems. Like it's right in your face. And so that's something we could do another episode probably. We don't have time for it here, but man, like I don't know, man. So let's bring it back here. Let's kind of summarize our points to make sure we didn't miss anything. Defund the police. Anything we're missing?
I feel like there's probably still some more there, but we could probably bring that back another day. Probably a good topic for the four of us to have when Hunter comes back.
Maybe five of us. We have Kimberly as well. We'll see. We're teasing guests. This podcast might go on without me. There's like a 5 or so of us that do this, and the Sunday service, we're going to leave it as Sunday service in the future. And whoever wants to be on the Sunday service can be on it. Of this little crew we have. So that's going to keep happening, guys. Look for that in the future. By the way, we are on Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube. Please, if you get a chance, subscribe to my Twitch, subscribe to the YouTube. That helps tremendously. You don't have to actually do anything else. Just subscribe to it. It's free. Nothing else has to happen, right? But anyway, yeah, we can definitely go over defund the police more if we have to, other episodes. Well, again, it's such a big topic that it will find its way in. It'll bleed into other topics, no question. But what about China? Anything we're leaving on the table for China that needs to be discussed?
Probably their like Silk Road that they're building. That's kind of a big deal.
Explain that to my listeners.
So China right now is building what's called a modern-day Silk Road. Vox actually did a pretty decent special on this. I want to say it was like 2 years ago. Right now, they are approaching several nations in Western Asia and down into Africa, where basically they are going into those nations and lending money to those nations to build up infrastructure in those countries, but they're not actually allowing the people of those countries to actually do any of the building themselves. They're actually like bringing Chinese workers from China, obviously, to those countries to do the work, and then those countries will just owe that debt to China. Meanwhile, all of the like products that are also being shipped from China to these nations are being shipped along this road that they are physically building to all these different nations, where all of these roads lead right back to China. So like China's building this like massive like transportation system where everyone will just have this like giant form of trade that just leads back to China. And that is pretty intense as far as I'm concerned. China is doing a lot right now to get other nations basically in debt to them, which will only further consolidate their power, and probably reasons why other nations won't speak up against them.
What they've done to us. China, us getting in debt to China and China buying our debt, that was no like mistake.
They're like masterminds.
Yeah, they do. They have good plans. Like, what's the best way to get control of the leading, like, I guess, nation entity in the world? Own all their debt.
Well, the country that cares only about money.
Yeah, because if they stop our production and kick us out, we're not going to have goods and services. We're going to have to buy them from someone.
It's actually more than that even. They're actually, like, they're building military bases in some of those places too, right? They're like, hey, we'll come in, give us this little plot of land, we'll give you all this money, we'll buy it from you.
Appalling. They're literally using their presence.
Yeah, that's
basically as a threat.
Well, they're doing what we did, right? We have bases in Germany. We have bases in name a country. We have a base there, right? And so they're doing something similar to that, where they're like, hey, let us build a base. We'll give you money, and you can you'll pay it later, but we'll use this base for stuff. Right.
They're basically copying our game plan. They're being the Burger King to our McDonald's, basically.
Yeah.
That's right. Can we blame them? Like, oh, hello. Hey, Courtney Holland is watching. I waved to you, Courtney.
No, thanks.
I wonder who that is. But, yeah, I don't know, man. Like,
no, it's not just like that route either. They're also doing what they're doing down in the South China Sea, where they're building those man-made islands so that they can, have all the shipping routes. Also, because apparently the international waters rule is that if if any shipping route that's like within like so many miles of land that belongs to you is actually your water. So China's like just building man-made islands all over the South China Sea so they control all of that water. It's insane.
Yeah, they're just really good at Settlers or Catan.
Yeah, they're playing Risk, right? That's funny. This is kind of the last time we'll probably do a deep dive on China, so I want to get it all off the table. But like, I think we did a pretty good job. Any of the listeners here, appreciate you, Brian, for being like the thorn in our side. I actually been watching your comments as they come in, and anything that's like super legit, I'll pop on the podcast. But like, we definitely in the future, please, people, look for this Chinese infringement. I don't know how to call it, but just keep your eyes open, please. Don't let the human rights violations go unnoticed. Don't let them control the people of Hong Kong like they are doing. Like, just be more aware of it. I know it's an election year. People probably care about the president. Yeah, Z for life, right? He probably will die as their president or whatever.
I have to add something really quick. So most people feel like they can't do anything, and people who have gotten educated on this and feel like it's really important, write to your congressman. So, like, email, fax, get as many people as you can, because the thing is, if they can't get through on their phones and get on their fax machines, congressmen, I've talked to actually state senators, they're more likely to, like, actually address your issue and actually acknowledge it. Because talking to our state senators, most of them are like, well, I don't really read a bill unless it's something I'm passionate about. I rely solely on that stuff. And a lot of ways people have gotten policy change is literally just by, like, drowning them out. Call constantly, send faxes, send letters, make it really hard for them to do their job without, like, unless they address your issue. So I'm just going to put that out there. Be
persistent.
Yep.
And so that applies to defund the police as well. If you're passionate, either way, if you think the police funding needs to be increased and the boys in blue are doing their job, then you need to, like, be vocal about it. Same with the opposite. The people, obviously, Black Lives Matter, these anti-police protests, like, they're vocal. And that's why we're hearing them. This is why we're talking about them. So be vocal. Don't do anything crazy. Don't riot, please. I think that's silly to rob someo's business because the police. I don't understand that. But
it's beyond silly.
Yeah. I have a friend who, like, a very logical friend too, and like, they are always posting things like, life is more important than property. Why can't we have both? They're not mutually exclusive. Why can't you have property and life?
That actually brings a really good point to when I was talking about taking sides with the party. I feel like a lot of people are like that, all or nothing. It's like, oh, you're supporting the BLM protest. This drives me crazy right now. Why aren't you supporting the kids that are getting trafficked? And I'm like, okay, what? That is like if you go on social media right now, it's the this or that argument, and people act like, oh, you're concerned about Black Lives Matter. Obviously, you're not concerned about the kids being trafficked right now, and that drives me insane. It's one of the most annoying things I see in the media because it's literally just media-driven separation. They're trying to divide us.
Honestly, it makes no sense whatsoever. It's just like you're absolutely right. Until human trafficking is over, Black people just don't matter.
Yeah.
You're absolutely
right.
I don't know why I couldn't see it from your point of view before. Until every child is safe, Black people just need to their existence just doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, sir, can you just calm down? You're not being trafficked at this point in history.
Yeah, you're good. One thing I always see, to me, it's a very silly argument, and I want to bring it up, is Black lives don't matter because abortion, right? Black people get abortions.
Black people, eh?
Well, that's what I see a lot is like inner city abortions, right? And so, people.
Okay,
abortion is a fundamental thing. You're not going to convince people either way. If you think abortion is wrong, you are allowed to think that. Please leave that as your opinion, right? If you think abortion is okay, same thing. You're allowed to have that opinion. Abortion isn't one of those subjects that you should go preaching about, unless obviously the government is like killing people who have abortions. But
That's a touchy subject, Lloyd. I know that might
is.
have to be its own episode.
Maybe we do.
Because I had a friend who literally didn't know coat hanger abortions were called coat hanger abortions because hundreds of women were dying every couple of months from trying to do abortions themselves.
Or falling downstairs, right?
Oh, we are falling into the rabbit hole.
The argument I'm trying to make here is, please do not equate Black Lives Matter and anti-police and or Save the Children to abortions. They're not the same topic. Abortions have their own place. We can discuss that. Do not equate that to Black Lives Matter, right? People have different opinions on that.
People do a lot of straw manning. They look at your argument and they're like, oh, then you don't like this, creating a straw man argument. And it's like, okay, first of all, I haven't addressed that. And you're actually wrong. I believe the opposite of that, but they just draw conclusions from your argument to make a straw man to argue with you with, I see too. And I think that's kind of what the abortion thing is. Sure, I can't really argue with this because you made a good point, but that means you're against abortion or you're for abortion. You know?
Can you explain what a straw man argument is for those of us out there who
Logical
do
fallacy.
not know that lingo?
So that's like, let's say I am a pro or anti-abortion, and I think kids should live, and that would be like me, or like, let's say Desmond believes that, and I come up and I'm like, oh, you think that we shouldn't have abortion because you like kids, then why don't you care about those kids in internment camps? Technically that's a straw man. You're attacking that person for a belief that they don't even believe in. You're creating a straw man to attack them for when they could be completely against the kids in internment camps. You're just finding something to argue with. You're arguing for something that isn't the point of the argument.
Yeah, it's making a false point. That's what it is, right?
Okay, I feel like I've seen every politician do that in every debate ever.
Oh, it's very common. Like, it's really fascinating to actually look at fallacies of arguments.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm having flashbacks of Ted Cruz right now.
If you guys get a chance, there's a million of these, but look up the logical fallacies. There's like cherry picking is one. Ad hominem is popular, which means
ad hominem is like the number one I see. Well, you're ugly.
Yeah, you're a libtard. Okay.
I feel like that's what Trump does every day, where he's just like, that's a very nasty woman. That's
exactly what it is. Right there. If you can't address the point, attack the person's character, right? And so also there's like cherry picking. That's a big one. Oh, this many people have died of COVID. Well, what's the actual percent? Like, that's, you can pick the data you want, and technically you're right, but the whole picture is different.
Yeah, but you're painting it to fit your argument.
Yep. There's so many fallacies. We should probably do a podcast on that. That would be a very boring podcast.
I love to. So I'm super in debate, and I always throw fallacies in people's face when they start arguing with me, because I'm like, well, the point you're actually making is blah, 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 and it makes your argument less successful. Just because I think it's really important to do that, but I also like, I don't know, I like research, I like facts, I like reading up on stuff.
You should. Facts are better. They're much better. Either or fallacy, you either a Democrat or you're a Republican. No, that's not true. Or there's so many fallacies. Oh,
yeah, anytime I say something, I get that a lot. So, like, I'm a very liberal person, and like you, I believe in fiscal responsibility, conservatism. So, like, whenever I'm talking about my liberal stuff, and everybody's like, that's just because you're a libtard or a snowflake, and I'm like, I actually don't consider myself, per se, a Democrat, just like I don't consider myself a Republican. I think both parties are actually doing a terrible job of actually completing the stuff that I believe in both parties. But I always get that either-or thing. Well, if you're not you're against us.
Can I share with you guys my feelings on politics?
Yes.
I developed my feelings on politics, I think, when I was like in our senior year of high school. For listeners out there, we all went to high school together. So I was listening to a Chris Rock special, right? And Chris Rock said that he did not understand why America has such a gang mentality, where people felt the need to be either liberals or they felt the need to be conservatives. And once they picked their side, they had to be with that side all the way.
So there's doing something.
That's me, sorry.
Yep, that's all right. I was like, what is that? That's fine.
I do this every time.
So, yeah, I just don't believe that, like, it's really a good thing in any way, shape, or form that you craft your entire viewpoint on the world by just the lens of one party. So when someone calls you a libtard, the question I would ask them is like, do you just go along with every single thing that Republicans say and don't even question anything they say ever? Is that really how you view the world?
With Trump, yes, that's happening.
It sure is. It's kind of appalling.
I would say the same thing to anyone who's a Democrat, though. Like, would
Oh
you just
no,
go along with
true.
anything
Just
that
like
Democrats say? Like anything? Like all of it? Just like it
Hillary
makes no
Clinton,
sense to me.
Biden. When you like start making excuses for your politicians, I think you really need to like consider that you're a fanatic. That's how I feel. I don't think you should ever make excuses for your friend, your husband, anybody. Things need to be addressed, and I think it's the same with politicians. Once you start making excuses for them, you really need to look in the mirror.
Speaking of looking in the mirror, no, that's a terrible segue. I have no segue here. We're pretty much out of time, guys. I had nothing catchy. I was trying to be catchy there, but I'm a terrible podcast host. So, real quick, any sort of shout outs? I know you already got your little plug in earlier, Desmond, but anything else you wanna fill my audience in?
Of course. I am the host of the Independent Thought podcast. Please come check us out on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. We also have a YouTube channel coming up soon. Please check out our new episodes. And we also have 2 episodes with Lloyd. So come listen to those at the very least.
Me. And then Courtney, I know you're a super busy person. By the way, she's our intellectual. That's why. Anything crazy going on? Anything you want to alert the audience to?
Not really. I don't have a lot going on in my life other than school. So
she has.
I
a
have
lot.
one more thing for the
Listen
audience.
to her. She knows a lot. She's deceptive. She's there. But what's up?
If you're one of those people who's really worried about fraud in this mail-in election, don't forget that you can drop your mail-in ballot off in person to any place, to any election office.
yes, I posted about this. Feel free to share it.
Yeah, so like please like do yourself a favor, don't buy into the hype. If you're that worried about your ballot, just take your mail-in ballot, fill it out at home, and drop it off yourself. Call it a day.
But don't. I saw Trump saying to be sure, mail it in and go to the thing. That'll actually bug up elections and make it like longer to count and a bunch of recounts. So don't do both, no matter what Trump says. Either go in and vote by yourself, or else I would hand in my ballot personally, just because of this whole U.S. Postal Service thing going on.
And I'm sorry, I know we're trying to cut the podcast off, but that drives me so crazy that this man has been spending months talking about fraud in the election. He just openly told people to vote twice.
Yep.
Well, speaking of mail-in ballots, next episode. So anyway, hey guys, we're gonna wrap it up here. Thank you for watching. Phil, by the way, you're late, but I appreciate you watching. I'll see you soon, actually. But yeah, we're gonna wrap it up here. We're gonna be on next week. Sunday's gonna be this time around 1 o'clock-ish, 2 o'clock-ish, depending on when we get going. It all depends on a couple factors. But if anyone in the audience has any sort of opinions, reach out to any of the people here, Courtney, Desmond, or myself. There is a lip service podcast group you can reach into. Put your opinion there. We'll get your. We'll try to have your voice heard, as long as it's not like a ridiculous voice, like something.
Your shirt's ugly, Lloyd.
Yeah, that's not gonna happen. Sorry, this shirt is fly. Nice. I didn't show you the button down, but okay, guys. We'll see you all in the next episode. Okay, we're gonna do a little dance.